On the Importance of Being Nice to the Janitor, written by Jackviator. Tom was, as usual, though certainly not by choice, walking home from his secretarial job at the local interspecies diplomat relations office. As he walked, he absent-mindedly itched at the stuffy, pretentious-looking suit that he was forced to wear when on the job. But the itch wasn't the only thing he felt. He also felt the all-too-familiar prickly feeling on the back of his neck, and instinctively knew that he was being watched. Yet, despite how often he looked, he couldn't see anyone around. That prickly feeling was one that he'd uncomfortably accustomed with these days, one that he had dealt with for weeks now, on this walk home, step after step, city block after city block. He sighed and shook his head. Okay, calm down, you're just being... He heard a sound from above, and thought he saw movement on a roof across the street. But when he looked harder, nothing. Nonetheless, he sped up his pace, paranoid. It was this nervous, jumpy feeling elevating all of his senses that allowed him to hear the sound of something whooshing towards him through the air as he passed in front of an alley. Instinctively, he ducked, and just in time. He heard a loud clang of metal on concrete, and out of the corner of his eye he saw a large figure holding a metal pipe that had embedded itself into the wall he was standing in front of. He took off at a sprint down the sidewalk, but felt a sudden impact in the back that knocked him off balance and sent him sprawling to the pavement. He grimaced as he felt the stabbing, sharp pain shooting up his torso that he knew from experience meant that whatever had hit him had fractured at least one of his ribs. He tried to get to his feet, but was pushed back down as he suddenly felt a boot pressing on his throat. "You're quick, skin boy, but not quick enough." Tom groaned in pain as he looked up and saw the fang-filled sadistic grin of the Zetrovan staring down at him, their reptilian scales glittering in the faint double moonlight. If looks could kill, Tom's withering glare would have vaporized the Xeno on the spot. But they didn't, and he was street-smart enough to know the drill. He sighed in resignation. "All right, look, quantum computer is in the back left pocket, wallet is in my front right. Just take him and leave me alone." "Ha! I figured some suit type like you would snivel and plead a bit more, but you're eager to please, eh?" He felt the reptile creep rifling through his pockets, then heard an angered growl from above. 5 credits and decades-old tech." Tom let out an exasperated snarl of his own. "Oh, for the love of... No one with half a brain carries more cash than they can afford to lose, and the computer is government-issued, not exactly top of the line." He was interrupted by the feeling of a boot pressing further into his neck, and he found himself struggling to breathe. "Sounds to me like the type of thing some tightwad who's hiding their real valuables somewhere else in their Persian would say. So where are they?" "I don't have any more." He felt the boot press even harder, and his vision started to go spotty. "Where? Please, you have to believe me." The pressure tightened, and the edges of his vision grew dark. "Not the answer I'm looking for, skin boy." Tom felt a flash of panic. He didn't want to die here. Not like this. Not over his crap wages and lack of access to good tech. But suddenly, he felt the pressure on his throat vanish and heard a strangled cry from above. As he gasped for breath, he looked up to see the Zetrovan struggling with an odd shape that had wrapped itself around his neck. An odd shape that almost looked familiar. Wasting no time puzzling over this new development, Tom hastily got to his feet, ignoring the protest from his ribs as he did so. Looking around, he saw the pipe that the Zetrovan had struck him with lying on the ground. He grabbed it, raised himself, and swung at his attacker's head. Despite Tom's scrawny limbs not providing much in the way of strength, the Zetrovan crumpled onto the ground, and Tom bashed him a couple more times for good measure until the Zetrovan stopped struggling to get up, knocked out cold. Tom fell to his knees and caught his breath, wincing as the adrenaline surge that allowed him to ignore the pain wore off, and he felt the agony of his ribs screaming at him for what he had just done. Then a voice came from the darkness. "Are you okay?" Tom glanced up and saw the odd shape slowly uncurling itself from the neck of his attacker, and standing up to reveal... Wait. What? Hold on. What the... Is that you, Jit? Jit Zok, the Yovlok co-worker of his, as Xeno race's members are quadrupedal, converged on an evolutionary path quite similar to Terran geckos, and would be lucky to grow as much as a meter tall, stepped forward. Yes, I'm sorry I didn't intervene earlier. I saw you getting mugged, and I started calling the police, but as I was calling them, he started hurting you, and I panicked and... She took a deep breath, ceasing the waterfall of words streaming from her mouth. How badly are you hurt? His mind raced with questions, but they could wait. There were more pressing matters. I think I fractured a rib or two, but I'll live. You should definitely call an ambulance for the Sky, though. Head injuries are no joke. She paused, giving him an odd look. You were just mugged by him. More than that, he nearly killed you, and your first thought was for his safety. Tom nodded. I've been in similar shoes to his before. I never robbed anyone, but when times were desperate growing up, I was very tempted, and more than once, I don't want him getting brain damage on my behalf. He saw Jitzok looking him up and down, as though re-evaluating him. You're even kinder than I thought. Oh, thanks. She nodded, smiling as she pulled out her quantum computer and dialed the ambulance. While they both waited, he finally gave voice to the main question on his mind. So, what are you doing here? Jitzok shrugged. I was just on my way home, like you, when I saw him attack you. Tom's eyes narrowed in suspicion. Jit, you told me yourself that you live on the opposite side of town from here. So unless you're taking one hell of a scenic route... Okay, fine. I was just, you know... She looked guiltily towards the pavement, unable to meet his gaze. Following you. Tom's eyes widened in surprise, and he opened his mouth, but found himself speechless for a moment. Listen, I know that it sounds kind of creepy, but... Okay, yeah, no matter how I put it, it sounds creepy. You bet your ass it does. What do you mean you were following me? It's just, I know you passed through the sketchy neighborhood on your walk home, and I just want to make sure that you get home safely, okay? Tom's eyes narrowed as he started to connect a few dots. Wait a minute. How long have you been doing this? No, not long. Just a few. He saw her long, flexible tail nervously wrapping itself around her long, lithe torso. Body language for her species that he knew meant that she was extremely nervous, and her next words were almost imperceptibly quiet. A few weeks. A million questions presented themselves, but only one managed to slip its way out of his mouth. Why? Because you're nice. This ground his thoughts to a screeching halt. Because you're nice? What do you mean? She awkwardly shifted her weight from side to side as she spoke. You remember when I was feeling down one day a few weeks ago, sitting by myself in some far corner of the break room and trying not to cry? Then when you made a point to come over, sit down and start up a conversation with me. You told jokes, talked about funny anecdotes, and you made me smile and laugh the first time in days. And you sat with me every day at lunch since, and... Why would that make you want to follow me home? You don't understand. You're probably the only one there besides my supervisor that said a word to me for the past month, probably longer. And my supervisor doesn't even remember my name most days. To everyone in that damned office, I'm just the weirdo who climbs the walls and crawls around the ceiling to get to the hard-to-reach spots for dusting. Just the one who has to unclog the toilets whenever the subpar plumbing acts up. Just, the janitor. Tom listened. He saw tears forming at the corners of her eyes. You're the only one there that treats me like a living being. You got to know me, treated me as a person, when everyone else just treats me like a piece of furniture, just part of the background. But then, when you told me you walked home every day, and what neighborhoods you walked through, I got so worried, because you're so kind and nice, and I figured since I can climb around walls and stuff unnoticed, I could, her tail coiled even tighter around herself, and the tears began to flow. Look, I know this sounds like the creepiest, most stalker-like behavior possible, but I swear, on the spirits of all my ancestors, all I wanted to do is make sure you got home safe, because I was worried about you, and I really can't lose this job. I'll be out on the street, and... She fell silent, but the tears didn't stop. Tom knelt down to her level. Hey, listen, it's okay. I believe you, all right? She looked up at him, wiping the tears away. But really? Yeah. You're not going to report me to Sapient Resources or anything? Tom laughed at this. To be blunt, even if I were creeped out enough to do that, which, for the record, I'm not, you did literally just save my neck, so it would be a major dick move on my end. To his surprise, she snorted in amusement. There you go, making me laugh again. Listen, I just, thanks. Seriously. He smiled. Likewise. The ambulance arrived not long after, and while the mugger did end up imprisoned, he thankfully avoided long-term damage. He actually wrote me a letter from prison, thanking me. Nearly getting my skull caved in finally gave me the perspective I needed to make major changes in my life, that sort of thing. We still exchange letters every so often. He's gotten himself out of work doing construction on Colony Worlds, last I heard from him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. A few months after the incident, after talking it over for a while, Jitzok and I decided to move in together for financial reasons, and for her to be able to carpool me to and from work, because she still worried sick every time I walked out the office doors towards home. Though I think that's really just what we both told ourselves at the time. I think we both knew deep down that one thing would eventually lead to another. As Tom spoke to the pair of children sitting in bed in front of the pair of them, one human, the other Yurok, Jitzok wrapped a towel around his arm and leaned into him, a warm smile on her face as she gazed down at the ring she hadn't removed from one of her front claws for 15 happy years, as Tom continued to speak. We were married 3 years later, not a big ceremony or anything. We certainly couldn't afford it at the time, but we didn't need anything big. We had each other, and that was more than enough. Jitzok snorted, causing the children to giggle in response. All right, pack in the sappy stuff, honey. Wait, what? It's true. He turned back to the children. And to get back on track, that is why. He looked to the children expectantly, and they certainly didn't disappoint. You should always be nice to the janitor. That's my kiddos. Now, off to dreamland, little ones. As I left the kids' bedroom, one via the floor, another via the wall, Jitzok turned to Tom. It's always so cute when you tell that story. You get so into it. Why wouldn't I? Nearly getting my throat crushed was one of the best things that ever happened to me. She snorted again as the pair entered their bedroom. Oh, hush you. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.